we have something called a fellows program. So every year we bring 20 people who we really feel think out of the box, who are really doing amazing things, and we give them a space to express themselves, and we stay with them throughout the years to be part of their journey, to accelerate their journey. So I would like to invite first someone who's from our fellows program last year. I was in MIT some time ago, and I've happened to go to her lab and see what she's doing. They have something called NuVu Studios. And she is part designer, part architect, part technologist, part humanitarian. I would love to bring Saba onto the stage to talk about her journey. And we have our next speaker who's going to help with the slides, and then she'll come over. Okay, sorry. I'm trying to stay on time here. So Saba, tell me, this is a lab. We were talking about the fun factor, right? So the first thing is the ability to fail and prototype and fail and prototype. So tell us about your lab and your vision and how the journey started.
Well, you talked a lot about failure, so I'd say that my journey actually began with accepting that failure was a part of learning, and a very key part of learning. When I was in architecture school in college, I really had my first experience with really having a very open-ended design challenge. I was given a design brief and really asked to concept and come up with ideas. And this was the first time that someone who was an adult actually had given me the responsibility of coming up and generating some very complex ideas. And it was a space, the studio itself, that really, really nurtured creative thinking, a very strong critique culture where I was given a lot of feedback as I was going on this journey and developing my project. And it was a space where I could fail. And specifically, that process of failing came in the form of actually visualizing my ideas. And how I did that was through sketching, modeling, 3D modeling, doing 3D design work, and going and recognizing the problems that were there and the issues that would come up. And that was a really key part in this understanding that failure was a part of that process. And so when we started NuVu about 3 years back, we realized that, first of all, how could we really capture this essence and really value failure as a part of the learning process, and really capture the excitement that was present in the design studio, where it was about collaborations, coming up with very new ideas, being in a very exploratory culture, where you could be free to think and bring new ideas to the table. So there were aspects of the architecture studio that I had gone through that I really valued, and some very key skills. So we actually designed a studio space that was very, very open, that was very flexible, physically itself. And then we created a basic framework around which students could actually design, think collaboratively, work together, and concept new ideas. And we were looking actually at the education field at that moment, and looking at the sort of educational paradigm where the focus was really on the teacher and not the student. So how could we kind of change that model and turn it upside down, where suddenly it was really, the learning process was driven by student interest, and really their own motivation and personal desire and their own passions. So it really became about the creative process of the student and giving them all the resources and the tools that would allow them to actually generate those ideas and take an idea from a very rough concept and actually get it to a tangible product.
Just to give a background, what I saw when I went to their studio is that they negotiate with a school where a student comes for an entire term to the studio. So it's like they're not going to classes or anything. They just come for an entire term to be at the NuVu Studio. So they come up with an idea themselves, what they want to work on, and they're working on productizing it throughout the term. So basically for 3 months, the students, the high school students, are coming there, and every day they're working with their hands on a new product idea. So tell us about the creative process you work on.
So you know, what we were looking at was around that time, there was a lot of conversation around 21st century skills. We saw uh, psychologists like Howard Gardner, who was talking about multiple intelligences, that there wasn't just a single way of learning, but people actually had different ways of learning and processing information. We saw entrepreneurs like Peter Thiel, who were actually paying students to drop out of college and actually nurture their business plans and ideas, which focused around biotechnology, engineering, new app design. And so there was sort of a rejection of the traditional education climate. And for us, what we saw that was really exciting was this sort of entrepreneurial innovation culture. And sort of the key skills that we saw there were creativity, collaboration, communication. And how could we actually design a studio experience that would nurture these three skills at their basic core? So if we look actually at the creative process, it's not a very linear point. You actually go through a whole sort of process of going back and forth, getting a lot of feedback, making a lot of revisions to your design. And we wanted to actually create a space where students felt comfortable kind of going through this process and going through these negotiations with your mentor professor to get to this final product. And so what we did was we actually created an entire studio environment outside of the traditional education realm and ran it as a full-time innovation lab, partnered with schools, and allowed students to come to the studio for a full-time program for a very immersive period of time. And the focus being that students would actually focus on one single project, and that would be sort of their, their driven interest. And within a period of time of 2 weeks, they would actually then develop that project out with the support of the mentors that we brought into the studio. And so this for us was a very important aspect. It's about connecting students with what was actually happening in the field and with interesting innovations. It was also giving them a platform for them to develop their own creative confidence around developing ideas. And it was also allowing them to connect with really important mentors and collaborators who were doing really interesting things, and sort of nurturing their own interest and exposing them to the wide range of things and innovations which were happening across the world.
And I think the other thing is the kind of teachers, the mentors you bring are also from different fields. It's not that it's a mathematician or a physicist, but you bring artists, you bring photographers, but they're still getting into technology, they're getting into doing things with their hands. I want to shift a little bit and talk about this program you do, City as a Lab. So you've done a program in Brazil, and you just finished one in Bombay. Tell us a little bit about the program you did in Brazil about City as a Lab.
So I think this sort of comes from my architect, urban designer background, where I've always been very fascinated in the issues and how cities are transforming and how they're affecting even smaller towns and villages, and what are really the relevant issues happening in the world, and really connecting that with youth. So the city as a lab sort of idea began with kind of actually seeking out interesting opportunities, interesting problems and challenges which are happening in very transformative cities. So this past January, we actually looked at Brazil, and that became a very interesting sort of case study for us and the students. As it was Brazil and Rio specifically, as it's on the verge of the World Cup and preparing for the Olympics, we see that the whole city is sort of transforming, and villages themselves, the favelas, are sort of changing as the city is becoming developed. So how could the kids who were working with us at NuVu in the US actually connect with youth to actually understand and utilize technology to help sort of deal with some of those challenges? And so the Brazil studio, which was themed around Right to the City, was really about the youth in Brazil and Rio really taking up and being a part of that process, and having a platform through technology to actually either talk about those issues, to actually make it and disseminate that information back to the US and other parts where there was a little bit of a lack of knowledge and understanding of the real issues that were happening in Rio as a result of those mega events.
Yeah. So, and then you just concluded something you did it in Bombay. So tell us about how you brought in music and Mumbai together.
So going back to the idea of sort of looking for interesting ideas and themes to sort of design the studios, coming to Mumbai and bringing the NuVu Studio here, we were searching for, well, what really are some really fascinating and interesting things that we could explore in Mumbai? And Mumbai has a very rich history of art and music. And we're always looking for interesting ways of, well, what is the future of music and technology and art? So we actually themed the entire studio that we did in Mumbai around interactive music and art, and brought in musicians, artists, gamers, interactive designers to actually come and teach these 2-week studios with youth from Mumbai, and actually develop interesting concepts around those themes. So one of our studios was a brainwave music and art studio. So how could you use this new technology of an EEG headset and actually create interactive art video installations that actually change the way that art is consumed to make it more participatory. We had an interactive storybook app studio, which was coached by Shilo over here, and really actually bringing youth to understand storytelling in a new format. We have iPads and new technologies available to us. How can we actually change the medium of storytelling to make it more multisensorial? So these were all interesting ideas that we were able to sort of develop and design, also by collaborating with sort of the entrepreneurs and innovators which are local to India, and actually bringing that sort of thinking and excitement around these sort of new sort of parallels in disciplines to a younger audience.
What is the age group of the kids who was in your class in this
So
session?
we do this interesting thing is where we also mix ages, mixed grades. So we have everything from 5th graders working all the way up to 12th graders. And speaking about sort of working in a collaborative team where it's really essential that you actually have a team with different skill sets, different perspectives at play, that really helps in the process of designing something which is really open-ended. So everyone's sort of particular skills actually come to play in that sort of environment. So the younger students are very, very sort of uninhibited with their ideas. They're very, very creative. And they're the first ones to sort of jump out and scream out ideas. And the older ones sort of have this depth where they're able to think very critically and actually develop out an idea. So having sort of that spectrum of even ages and grades and backgrounds really enriches the projects that they're working on.
Great. So, you work with a very different set of mentors. So what I thought we would do is we'd switch a bit, and we'll bring one of your mentors, Shilo, and go through her journey, and then talk about how you both have collaborated. Thank you, Saba. So, the journey that Saba is on is, with her partner in MIT, is not an easy one, but it's just amazing to see more and more schools come and participate with her. So, Shilo is a fellow from a couple of years ago, and so we have fully utilized her in just about everything we do. So what I thought we would do is, Shilo, go over your journey a little bit of, in the fun factor, we talked about failure, and I think Saba addressed that. The second one is uncertainty. How do you go from uncertain to certain? And so your journey has always been full of uncertainty. So tell us how you started as an artist, and tell us your journey.
So I think I've had no choice but to completely embrace absolute uncertainty. When I was 16 years old, somebody saw my blog and he got in touch with me and he said, "Do you want to illustrate a book for kids?" And I said, "Sure." And suddenly, before I knew it, I was a children's book illustrator. It just happened. I didn't learn how to do it. I didn't go to any class and figure it out. It just happened. And then somebody asked me whether I wanted to design a poster for a women's rights campaign, and it happened to be the Pink Chaddi campaign, which went viral across the country. And before I knew it, suddenly I was managing this collective of 250 different artists that used art as a way of protesting against social change. To create social change. And then somebody asked me to design a stage, actually Inc. asked me to design a stage, and I'd never done it before, but I learned it and I did it, and that's how I realized that I always learned, and that's why I think I connected really well with NuVu as well, is because you just throw these kids into this project where suddenly they're told that they need to learn After Effects and they need to learn how to animate and interaction design, and they do it. So yeah, that's really been my embracing uncertainty.
And so tell me a little bit about your, this is actually a painting by Shilo's mother. And you have certain thoughts about the Indian visual and how that plays into technology. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I'm a complete, I'm obsessed with markets. I love bazaars. So anywhere I travel, I always go and check out the market. And I find that, markets even in the south of India and the north of India are completely different. In India, you find haldi and fish and colors and all kinds of things going on. When I travel abroad to France, I would find vintage lace and some lovely perfume. But somehow, when we get onto the digital bazaar, everything just looks the same. And this really, really bothered me. I wanted to find why, on a platform that's actually quite universal, it should encourage cultural exchanges, not kill it completely. And so I actually started working on a series of interactive books for kids called Khoya, which used the digital platform, the iPad, to really bring a cultural tale to different parts of the world. We actually launched this at Inc. a couple of years ago, and it's done pretty well on the App Store.
So when Shilo first came to us, I think she had a cardboard cutout, and she said, if I had an iPad, I think this is what it would look like. And she was terrified of using iPad. She was pretending the cardboard was iPad. And we worked with her, and I think, for me, the kind of doors we can open to youngsters is what makes me excited, of getting her that connections and getting her that group of people. So actually 1 year she talked about it. Next year I think she actually launched it. By then it not only launched, it just became one of the most popular downloaded apps in India for a while, and became very successful. So it's great to see not just ideas, but ideas turning into reality, from cardboard to
and that's exactly what we've been doing together. I mean, Saba and the NuVu Studio over the last couple of weeks is that these kids did make cardboard iPads. They made their first prototype on a cardboard iPad. And essentially what we were looking at is trying to find what is absolutely cultural in Bombay that we can work with. What can we bring onto this universal app store? And so for me, one of the things could you just go back to the last slide? One of the things about India in particular is that you can't help but be absolutely bombarded by it. It's all over the place. There are symbols and mantras and tantras and all kinds of stuff going on all over the place. We have gods that have limbs coming out of them and lotuses growing out of their bellies, and it's beautiful. And so for me, trying to see how we could bring some of this ritual into a technological platform was really interesting, and we tried to do that with the kids as well. And so if you see in this particular interaction, over the last week in Bombay, we used the NeuroSky headsets, the brainwave readers, to get them to actually meditate, to make their way through the story. So as they would meditate, the story would unfold itself for them, and they would make their way to the next page. Another kind of interaction that we worked with over here was, there's a lot of talk about how the iPad is completely multisensorial and it's changing the way that stories are told. But actually stories have always been quite multisensorial. Apart from the book, which is just image and text, we've had people like these Pattachitra artists who actually sing as they're showing you their paintings. Or I've been working with shadow puppeteers in Kerala, and they have sound and all kinds of animation going on, and it's all happening right there in front of you. So it's all been multisensorial, and to see how one can bring a little bit of that traditional multisensorial storytelling onto the iPad has been another quest with the NuVu Studio. So, yeah.
And actually, one of the things that was fascinating to me when we started working with Shilo is that even in Khoya, it's not just a linear book reading. You had to go out and take a picture of a flower that's outside, come back, and that'll open another door for you. Or you'd get a letter, you have to read it, and it would open another room for you. So it's combining very traditional things with the new technology to create a multisensorial effect is what's exciting to me.
And so the last two animations have actually been done by like 12, 13-year-old kids in the last couple of days, where they've learned how to animate, they've learned how to illustrate, they learned how to create a story, everything pretty much, from scratch, softwares, interaction design. And these was a particularly rowdy group of boys who knew lots and lots of games, so they taught me a bit about interaction design as well in the process. But with this particular studio, it was cool because we brought in a bunch of Hindustani musicians, and they really spoke to us about the philosophy behind Hindustani music. And a lot of those aspects were then brought into the app. So for example, in tabla, one of the collaborators on this project, Hina, who we actually met at Inc. as well. She was telling us about her guru and how her guru had stopped playing the tabla 15 years ago, but still he's been teaching her for the last 6 years just by speaking out the notes. And so we created an interaction where, or actually the kids created an interaction where, somebody in the sky would speak out these notes to you, and so you had to play the different bowl of the tabla and repeat it as you went through the game. And so all of the interactions in the book, we're just showing you a little bit, but all of the interactions in the book dealt with the kind of philosophy of Hindustani music. And it was exciting because these kids hadn't heard any Hindustani music before this. So they were all like, ooh, actually the tabla is pretty cool, you know. Yeah.
And so is there one more? So also what happens is that at Inc. they both met. You know, they're fellows from 2 different groups, and they met, and they started working together. They just, today they've concluded their class at 3:15 and then rushed over here. So that's what's exciting for us, is that to move into modern times, we don't have to give up who we are. There is a way in which we can take who we are and, you know, add the elements to make it something modern. So what's exciting for me is to take a very Indian voice and make it very, very global. And that's what, you know, young people like Saba and Shilo are doing. So thank you very much for that. So I just want to wrap up by my piece of it to say that there is one terminology that we use at Inc., which I want to leave you all with, is there's a quote and a term. My favorite quote is that life should not be measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the number of moments that take our breath away. So we want to create a new creative economy where there's a new currency, where you don't measure success by the billions of rupees or dollars someone have in their bank, but by the billions of moments they create in creating an impact around them. So we call them billionaires of moments. So we have had an opportunity and are going to continue present a lot of billionaires of moments to you, and we really invite you to walk into this creative economy with us and become billionaires of moments. Thank you.